Hello, welcome to my podcast, Empowered to Thrive. I'm so glad you joined me today. I'm your host, Corrine Powell. I'm an intuitive mentor, and I help people pleasers to find happiness, embrace courage, and experience peace of mind. But say you're not a people pleaser, and you're desperate for change and not sure how to make it happen, then I'm here to help. In this space, you're going to find motivation to live a life full of joy and resilience. We'll talk all things inner wellness. And because I'm a mom, we'll throw in some knock-knock jokes. Just kidding. We'll talk mom hacks and parenting sometimes. Whether it's your first time here or you listen week after week, I am wanting you to know, as I'm always wanting you to know, that your life is so significant. You are so valuable. And I, for one, am happy that you are alive. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And would you do me a favor? Would you go ahead and subscribe to my podcast? Give me a good rating and write a written review. Any of those three things would help me so very much, and I would appreciate it. Enjoy the episode. I have Michelle Dixon joining me, and Michelle is a trauma specialist and a mindfulness coach who got her start in bodywork modalities for emotional release. Through her early work, she learned that there is much healing that can take place spontaneously and wordlessly when we learn to be fully present in our bodies. Michelle teaches that the path to long-term emotional healing must be paved with self-practices and processes for a deeper self-knowing, grounded in the body as much as in the mind and spirit. This is why she created her self-guided online program, Feel Better Now. Originally from Atlanta, Georgia, she's been living in Sydney, Australia for 20 years. She's a mother to 3 teenagers, plus a stepmom to 3 young stepdaughters. She has clients all over the world and absolutely loves her work and her path. And I'm so happy to be here with you, Michelle, and to learn more about what you do. And it is fascinating to me to find recovery and becoming more in tune with our bodies. So I am super excited to hear what you know.
Yeah, thank you, Corrine. I'm really excited to be here. It's it's a much neglected topic, I think, the body with emotional healing, because as a culture, we go so towards the mind modalities, that's the legacy of psychotherapy and the Jungian, Freudian tradition, is that we think emotional pain, we need to talk about it. And I think, all kinds of therapists are now starting to understand the importance of the body and bringing that in. So it's really cool to be able to bring that message to more people, because it's often the thing that's most neglected in the healing journey. And it's often the thing that when people discover the power of working with the body, it's the thing that unlocks that longer term healing. So where do you begin when you're introducing someone to this new concept, if they've been very focused on their mind and how that affects their feelings? How do you begin to introduce the body and how that's playing in? Yeah, that's a great question, because it really depends, on the individual or the context. I mean, often people find me because they've already become aware of the body piece of it and they want to work with it, or people find me because they know that they're carrying a lot of emotional pain and they feel it in their body, and no one's been able to really name that, and they don't want to talk about it, right? So they're looking for anything where they can avoid talking about their trauma past, their narrative history. So it kind of depends on how people find me, but often I like to at some point begin by just talking about this idea that the body keeps the score. It's that famous book by Besser van der Kolk about trauma and the trauma body, and how, at all levels of the body, we have body memory. And even if you don't remember something, your nervous system is going to remember it and act it out.
Mhm.
It's what I call the pain body. So I usually begin there with a little bit of education, but it's important not to overwhelm a person, because often, I mean, the incredible thing about doing body work is that experience speaks louder than information, as is the case, with everything in life, right? Like if you can help someone just ground in their body and start to scan their body and start to notice sensation and memory, heaviness, lightness, all of that, then that lived experience often opens the door to greater self-awareness and the desire to to pursue it more.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate the affirmation that, our experiences are teachers, because I know I came out of culture that, and maybe it's society, but for sure the family of origin, the culture I was immersed in, it was very much a focus on what do you know and how can you articulate what you know. And
Yeah.
so much of my journey through life, my personality, it's often I've experienced this. I might not have words for it yet. I've
Yeah.
experienced it, and here's what my heart feels. And so I just appreciate that affirmation, even through what you just shared there about, the body remembering.
Yeah, I think we underestimate our experience, and we do. You're exactly right. We live in a culture where we're expected to understand and articulate, and some people would say we're not a very heart-centered culture, and that's changing as we begin to recognize the power of emotions. And like, even sometimes my youngest, my 13-year-old son, will say things about like, boys have emotions too, mom. And and the reason the male suicide rate is so high is because we're not allowed to express our feelings. We have them, we just hold them in. And I have these moments when I go, okay, the culture's changing and this is really good. I think the younger people have more of an awareness that their experience and their feelings matter, and that's a really good thing. But to date, that wasn't my experience growing up, in my generation. And it's difficult because we want, we also, like I said before, we're really influenced by this kind of psychotherapy tradition of we have talk therapy. We're also really influenced by this Newtonian scientific approach where you have to measure it and see it in order for it to be valid. And that's also changing. There've been a lot of studies about incorporating somatic awareness into therapy. Somatic meaning of the body felt awareness. And also the revolution in psychedelics for emotional healing has shifted the conversation, because with psychedelics, it's the experience which is transformative, and they can't always measure that with science. They can see what parts of the brain light up, but it's really intangible. It's the experience. So I'm seeing this huge shift in really validating someone's experience. And something I've always said to my kids is, remember, there are two parts of you. There's the part that analyzes and thinks and has memories and knows. And there's a part of you that has this gut feeling, this instinct, and something happened, and you know that it happened, and you might not be able to explain it. And they're both 100% valid. And don't shut that down, because that's going to serve you for life. So for a lot of a therapeutic journey, a healing journey, depending on the age of my clients, when I get to the 20s and younger, it's a little bit easier to introduce this. But with the older generations, it's a lot more time to kind of go, okay, what do you notice in your body, and what do you notice in your nervous system, and how do you experience your breathing, and what do you think happened? Like, forget the analysis, but what do you feel that meant for you? So it is a really and you can probably tell I'm really passionate about it, because I feel like it's not just about emotional healing. It's about evolving us culturally, evolving us as humans.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I love your passion. It's great. And that's what we need. Like passion changes the culture. And I'm
Yeah.
all about that. And I agree that, I hold value for mind management as much as I hold value for recognizing what's going in my
Yeah.
body and how I'm
Yeah.
feeling. I was last night even feeling disappointment over something that might seem so silly, but I had picked up a dinner and then came home and didn't feel hungry. And I thought, no, I just bought this food. I was excited about this food. I spent money on this food and now I'm not even hungry and I'm not going to force myself to eat it. And I literally cried. I felt such disappointment. I recognized some things that were tied into it. You know, I work hard for my money and I had this feeling of, oh no, I just wasted it, and spoke to that. But I felt the disappointment and then reshifted the perspective. No, when I have this food, whenever it's going to be, whether it's tomorrow or whenever, I'm going to enjoy it. I know I'm going to. And I set the intention. You know, it was like this place of not shutting down how I felt, recognizing it, but also not staying stuck in it, and letting the emotion surface. And so, you know, I think there's a place for so much, and recognizing what's going on in the body is super important. I think about one of my children who experiences anxiety more than the others. And so it might show up as a stomach ache sometimes. And I grew up having stomach aches and said I had a sensitive stomach for years until I was an adult. And she recognizes, oh, my stomach's hurting. Oh, I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling excited. And I'm feeling it in my body. And I reflect as I observe my kids. And I'm so grateful that they are learning something different, because it took me coming to understand that as an adult, but I can show them a different way and let them, you know, be in touch with their whole being and be aware and knowledgeable of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. It reminds me of my daughter, who also experiences anxiety. I mean, she talks about it on her Instagram, so it's not a secret. And it's the same thing of this, you know, helping the younger generation, you know, have that shifting that needle to cultivate, you know, greater self-awareness and self-validation. And oh my gosh, like, imagine if we had access to these tools when we were growing up. But then I guess, you know, that's just, you know, you get what you get, use that hopefully to, you know, as you do with your kids, to, you know, impart what you've learned, and hope that changes the conversation. And it does. And you're absolutely right. What you said about, you know, it's so many things are important. I definitely don't just work with the body. I started out doing body work, and it's definitely informed my sensibility and my approach. But you know, it is important to look at how your mind is then interpreting these sensations. So often we're not conscious about that. We have a physical reaction that we don't notice, and then it throws up a story, and then we believe the story. So we walk around going, the problem is the story. The problem is the thing that happened. And we skip that step of like, this thing happened and we interpreted it in a certain way. So like it's all important. And I think that's what holistic coaching, holistic healing is all about, is recognizing that these things are really intertwined, you know?
The little bit I've shared is probably the depth of my understanding as far as what to do with recognizing what's going on in the body. So where would you take that? You know, looking to learn. I would love to learn.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, what you do is perfect for when you're, and I understand that you're coaching people to help them really change their lives, you know, like transform their lives and have a better experience and kind of create the life they want. And so what you're doing is, is absolutely perfect for that and makes a lot of sense. So when it comes to the body-based stuff, I work more in the realm of like really people who are really deep in suffering, and they need to do a process of release before they can get to be able to work with someone like you. So it's this like kind of a stages thing. Like, you know, I'm really, and I love, you know, I often refer people out to different practitioners and coaches, because I don't believe that, you know, I believe in healing, you know, a team. I think, you know, when we have big stuff, we need a team, and it's not about one piece of the puzzle. The piece that I initially specialized in, and that I always go back to, is that like really acute trauma, that acute emotional pain, where you can't even really, like you say, what do you want for your life? And they're like, to not be hurting all the time, to be able to sleep through the night, to not have, you know, night terrors, you know, that sort of thing. And so at that level, working with the body is a little different. It's not even to the stage of, tell me what's going on and what do you notice in your body. It's really about really finding ways to release the tension. So an easy way to explain that or understand it is based on actually Peter Levine's work, Waking the Tiger Within. I always get the title wrong, but Peter Levine, he founded somatic experiencing, and he did a lot of research around how animals discharge trauma, and how if an animal is hurt, it will instinctively go hide, shake, and then it will kind of go back to normal. Life goes on. Whereas humans, we have all these interventions we use to shut down the natural process of release. We give people drugs, to put you to sleep, to shock you, to numb the pain, whatever. And these things are, they're lifesavers. I mean, thank goodness we have our modern medicine in these situations, but there's also an aspect of it that's shutting down that natural instinctive need to shake off the trauma.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, because we're such complex creatures in terms of our brain structure and, our prefrontal cortex, which is always like analyzing and making meaning. When things happen, when emotional things happen, our brains naturally go, well, what does this mean? And how can I respond the next time it happens? And then it can create a narrative, and it can kind of embed those responses and create stories around them so that they carry on and on and on. And it's a very unconscious thing that happens, So we have the not being able to have a space to discharge the trauma when it happens. And then we have the meaning making of it, which kind of starts to get stuck in our nervous system. So our bodies go, oh, when I'm in danger, when I hear this sound or this sensation, or there's this vibe, or there's this thing that happens, I know that I'm in danger. And so my body needs to send blood to my extremities. So I'm ready to run, increase my heart rate. I need to be extra vigilant. And so this can mean, for example, that someone, in a social situation, they suddenly have panic attacks and they don't understand why. And it's just the noise of the environment, and it's triggered this reaction. So that's kind of what I mean by the body is holding trauma. There are many ways to explain it. So tell me if that doesn't make sense. I think there's so many people who are working at the level of explaining the nervous system and trauma. You can find all kinds of resources to help you understand that. But so hopefully that makes sense. Another way of explaining is so you have this energy that gets trapped in the body, and it's not had a chance to release. So the release part of the body work for emotional healing is really about finding a context in which you can start to have your body release that, discharge that tension, that held energy. And I started out doing, it was called shamanic de-armoring, 10 years ago when I started this journey. Mm-hmm. And that was, I did a lot of work with sexual abuse victims through, this body work, which is a deep tissue body work where the client lies on a table. So I'm working on the top of their body, which is where all the meridians and a lot of our emotions are stored in these parts. And it very much corresponds to acupressure points. So if anyone's familiar with, traditional Chinese medicine, there's a lot of correlation with different traditions. I mean, it's all the same, but different, Mm-hmm. And so I would work on the front of the body and just press and release in particular ways in order to kind of trigger physical pain, discomfort, which then underneath that, there's often emotion. And this from when a child, we see it most often in children, if they get hurt, they can be having, the day is fine. And then there's this physical event, like they stumble, they fall. And then suddenly they're crying about something totally unrelated. And you're like, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. You just scraped your knee and now you're complaining about how your sibling never does this, this, and this, and whatever. That is this in action. That is a great way to understand and to see what's happening every day. Is sometimes that physical discomfort can release a held emotion that's just been sitting there and it's not had an opportunity to come out. We've not allowed it to come out. We haven't been really present when it emerges. And so body work is a great way. This particular form, de-armoring, is a great way to just kind of activate a little bit of physical discomfort to see if there's any emotion under that. And then sometimes there'll be a memory that comes up as well in that spot. And the interesting thing about it from the body point of view is we often, we hold the same emotions in the same parts of our body universally, regardless of culture, geographic location, religious beliefs. And there's an interesting study that was done a few years back where they looked at people, they interviewed people all over the world from different backgrounds and said, where do you feel love? Where do you feel anger? And they would prompt them to experience that. And then they did some electromagnetic resonance imaging and showed that, in fact, across cultures, there's a very similar, we experience emotion and memory and body parts in a very similar way. And I've seen that again and again in my work, like grief is always in the chest, in the sternum. It's always in this area. And, there's a really good reason for that. When we experience a loss, when we experience grief, and grief, by the way, as you know, is not just about the physical death of someone, but it's also the grief of, it's any ending in life, any ending, any life transition, it could be your job has ended. It can be that, a lot of people are experiencing grief because of the circumstances of the quarantine, for example. But that experience of grief, often our initial response is we kind of hold our breath. It's instinctive. You're like, you take a deep breath in and then you just don't let it out because you're waiting for the penny to drop, and that causes constriction, in your chest, in your lungs. It's a muscular constriction. You can just imagine, if you hold your breath, you can feel your body tensing in a certain way. And if that continues over time and you're always experiencing that tension, well, that is what it means to hold grief in your chest. You're experiencing this muscular constriction, and there's a high correlation actually between asthma and grief. Adults with asthma who experienced, really profound grief as children, there's a very high correlation, and it all has to do with how we're holding that tension. So the bodywork can help over time start to release it. Until when I feel a body, if it's soft and pliant, then we've usually released enough, and then someone can work with someone like you to help them then create that life and look at their patterns and all of the other things. But just getting to a point where they're breathing freely, body work is really good. Now, there are a lot of modalities that I recommend, like to get started with something like that. And they're not just like deep tissue ones, like TRE, trauma release exercises. That's also really good. That's a shaking modality where you kind of, you bring on shaking in your legs and your knees, and that sort of resets the nervous system. That was invented by this guy who invented it for PTSD for war veterans in the States, and was trying to find a way to help them release that, the trauma from the body. So there are many different ways, and I can refer people to resources later. If it's not body work, look, the body is amazing, and we're such humans are so resourceful. And I'm really always a big fan of, really, really trying your best to listen to what you are drawn to, like what sparks your interest, what impulse you feel, because often people they'll be drawn to a modality, or they'll it'll be like, I keep hearing about this TRE, I should check it out. That's a really good indication that maybe that's the right one for you. But having said that, I know people who've had tremendous healing through something like dancing. They take a dance class, or they do like a free movement class, like Kundalini dance. There are a few of them, 5 rhythms dance, freedom dance, where it's just like movement to music, however you feel it. Qigong, yoga, yoga, not as much, because it tends to be more of a structure to the class. So with trauma release, body-based healing, it's really important to find something where you are kind of free to listen to your body and allow it to do what it needs to do, because your body it knows. Like it does know when you give it that trust. And when you trust your body, it's like, with an animal, no one needs to say to the animal, all right, you need to go hide in the bushes and shake for an hour and you'll be all right, Yeah. Our bodies know, and it's only our minds that get in the way and go, this is really weird. Why am I doing this? Yes. Get up in the morning if you need to and put on some music and just move. Your body will know what it needs to do to release. So
that was great. That's great. I definitely identify with dancing and the release and listening to my body and the movements. It's super, what you said is point on. And I do have a question. So you said there's certain parts of the body that hold certain emotions. I don't know how exactly you said it, but I'm curious because I often feel when I recognize I've been holding stress and tension in my body, I feel a lot of pain around my shoulder blades. So I'm curious, like what's that about?
Shoulders are interesting. Like usually shoulders and neck is about responsibility and feeling like you're carrying a lot of responsibility in your life. I often have seen it. I have seen it more often in men who are kind of like just supporting the whole family, like financially working all the time. Like, not that, not to be gendered, but I often see that, like I see that more often in men. But yeah, shoulders and neck is often about feeling the weight of responsibility.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What you shared is so fascinating that like certain parts hold certain emotions across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so much about the human experience. Even like there are so many ways that we actually can be connected as individuals. We are individuals and yet we are so connected. There are so many ways that we can identify with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm all about finding ways to bring everyone together. There's so much division and divisiveness, but we really can understand each other more than we know.
Yeah, I mean, we're really, as human creatures, we're really the same. We really experience, emotions and physical pain and, struggle in such similar ways. And, like this is one reason I created my program, Feel Better Now, is to introduce people to processes and practices that work. But within that, if I give you a menu, then, you can choose from the menu, but you also need to think about what do I feel like? What do I feel like having today? Or maybe it's nothing like you and your dinner last night. Like, okay, actually, I'm not hungry right now. And, maybe that's your body saying, I need a rest from digestion because I just need to restore. I mean, who knows, right?
Sure.
But so there's the universalizing element of it where you can kind of go, it's something around responsibility and the burden and feeling like I'm carrying a lot on my shoulders, metaphorically. But then you can dig deeper and find out like what that looks like for you personally, and it's amazing, Corinne, because a lot of people just don't, that you say, how, what are you noticing in your body? And they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, where do you feel that fear? Like, do you, what do you mean? I feel it in my head. It's just a feeling. And it takes a while to connect because we're not in the practice of connecting to our bodies. We're on devices. We're in our minds. We live in a really mental culture. I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, it's, our world is very like mind focused, and it can take a while to kind of drop in and really go, okay, what, and I always like to find a metaphor. Like, can you, like, what is the metaphor for you for where you're feeling this? Like, and what is the self-talk? Like, your ankle is sore and you're thinking, oh, damn it. I need to get to this shop and I can't, and it makes me so angry. And then what's the metaphor with that? Where else in your life do you feel like you can't get to the places you want to get to? And that can often unpack something deeper. And it all can start with that physical sensation, which is pretty amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be able to do a little bit of my own work, even just knowing where I usually feel the stress and how that makes so much sense. But I didn't even realize the correlation, the connection to feeling the weight of things, the responsibility, the pressure. So yeah. So before we close, is there anything else you wanted to share? Of course, I want you to direct people to where they can find you.
Yeah, well, so I have this online program, which is just it's for that deeper emotional healing. It's sort of to help people get from that stage to really suffering and being miserable and not maybe understanding why, but being sick of it and kind of knowing that you're ready for more, to being able to kind of then blossom and create the life you want. And you can find out about it on my website, michelle-dixon.com. I'm sure you'll have links.
Yes.
And just, so yeah, like I have a free guide to, trauma symptoms and, what they mean and sort of how to get started releasing that. I work with a lot of the people I work with have had like childhood abuse, even adult trauma, breakdown, narcissistic abuse, PTSD. So kind of at that part of the spectrum. But I guess, my final thing is really, to just, it's so important to take responsibility for your own healing journey and really do what feels right for you, and trust your instincts and trust your gut. And, even if you feel like, well, I'm not ready to do something, but I'm going to listen to these musical soundtracks and just learn to calm my nervous system, whatever it is, your inner knowing is going to really connect you to the perfect next step for you when you sit in that space of understanding that you actually have everything you need to heal, to thrive, to create it's all there inside you. And we need people or strategies or processes outside of us to kind of spark that, but you're really, the most important part of that journey. So, if you've learned anything, take on board what fits for you and what feels right for you, and everything else, don't worry about it.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I'll definitely have your information on where they can find you in the show notes. So, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Great.
This has been informative, and thank you for the good work that you are doing too.
And thank you for your work. I love reading your posts on Instagram and your testimonials. Amazing.
Here we are. We've made it to the end. What'd you think about what you heard today? Is there something you heard that you need to take action on? I'm one of those people who loves to not just sit and hear something, but to sit and hear and then go ahead and start implementing, taking action on what I hear, what was stirred up in me. And I encourage you to do the same. If you enjoyed today's episode, or perhaps you heard an episode in the past that really stuck with you, would you go ahead and share that with some of your friends and your family? It would mean so much to me. And also, if you want to connect with me, remember, you can always find me throughout the week on Instagram. I'm Kareen_Change Radically. Or you can email me anytime, Kareen@changeradically.com. I'd love to be in touch. And if there's any way that I can help you, please seek me out. Until we speak again next week, I hope that you will remember, in the moments that are loud and busy, and in the moments that are quiet and still, that who you are is super important. You are valuable, and I am so glad that you're alive.